If you are watching this channel for the first time, please we advise you click on the share button, click on the red subscribe button, and on the notification button, so that when we have a new episode coming out, directly it will be shared to you. You will have the link and be notified of this edition because they keep on coming and it will interest you, it will move you. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, viewers and listeners, with your regular anchor, Dr. Daniel Otto, on the Daily Positive Living Principle channel. Today will be another interesting topic. We'll still continue on the reasons why people blame themselves. Ladies and gentlemen, you wonder why we're still on this topic, because you will not know the reason why people behave until you get to understand the blame game. Will you believe that most of the negative occurrences, negative behavior, things that happen negatively in the society, in our world today, could be traceable either directly or indirectly to the blame game? And this is why we need to talk about it, because you cannot treat a case without understanding the diagnosis. You need to know the reasons why people behave the way they behave. Do you know that people kill because of blame game? People fight because of blame game. People divorce because of blame game. And we need to know. If you don't know, you will never know. Even hold up. If you see two fighting, even go slow, as a result of blaming each other. You're not driving well. You're not driving well. I mean, you can even see some people die because of the blame game. It's a serious matter we need to talk about. So many things are happening negatively in our society because of this blame game. We need to trace the cause. Until you know the reasons why people behave, you won't understand them. You'll be able to handle some people. You will not relate well. Your relationship will be better if you know the cause and know the reason why some people are behaving the way they are. And this is why we want to dwell on this topic for a time, so that we can understand why people behave and our societies can be better. In our last episode, we talked about various reasons, numerous reasons why people blame themselves, why there is blame game in individuals, in our families, relationship, in government, in leadership positions, in the party system, and all that. In today is going to be a part 2 of the reasons why people behave the way they behave, and it will interest you. Why do people behave the way they behave? One of the reasons we'll be considering today is people engage in blame game as a way of excellent defense mechanism. People use the blame game to defend themselves. They defend themselves so as to preserve their self-esteem, to preserve their ego, to preserve their pride. So they defend themselves. They use various methods, denial method, in fact, projection method or displacement method, so as to engage in the blame game. They bring all manner of reasons as denial or project some ideas, but the underlying factor is the blame game. A woman one day wanted to go and monitor her husband in the office because she heard a rumor that her husband was engaged in immoral act. And she decided to now go and do a traditional way of monitoring her husband in the office. Guess what happened? When she went on this monitoring, she went to the office and then entered the office without taking any excuse. Without even taking excuse for the receptionist, he went directly and opened the door on her husband. Guess what she saw? Because anytime you are going for monitoring your partner and the rest, be ready to take whatsoever you see. While she opened the door, she saw the lady, the secretary of her husband, on top of the lap of her husband on the same chair in the office. Immediately she opened the door and the husband saw the wife. Oh, the blame game in action as a way of defense. The husband stood up and he began to now began to blame the government. The husband said, can you imagine the reason why poor budgeting has affected this nation? This is why we are talking about the government. How can a government now make a budget of only one seat for both the boss and the secretary? Can you imagine? That is the reason why they have to share my seat with the secretary. This government is bad, though. The budgeting system is actually bad. The husband transferred the whole blame on the government as a way of defending his action. That is why we're talking about this. What are other ways or the reasons for blame game? People use blame game as a way of escape from a guilt. Many cannot stand the consequences of feelings ensure from an action. So in order not to escape, to exonerate themselves from the guilt, they engage in the blame game. So people use it as a quick way of escaping from a guilt. They use blame game to escape from a guilt. And this is what we're talking about. What are other reasons? Ignorance is a major key. The worst sickness on earth is ignorance, because what you don't know can kill you. Many people have died because of ignorance. How can you explain a case where somebody who was on the road, was walking on the road or moving on the road, and he was hit by a stray bullet and he was bleeding profusely? He was taken to a nearby hospital, and the hospital was blaming the guy for not bringing a police report until this guy bled to death. And the hospital kept on blaming the cause of death on the unavailability of a police report, not knowing the recent new law, the Health Act, that says whenever a person is under emergency, whether by accident, gunshot injury, or death in emergency, you don't need a police report to treat such a person. But because of ignorance of this law, the hospital kept on blaming the cause of death on their unavailability of the police report. This is how things are moving in our society. People die because of blame game. What are other reasons why people engage in a blame game? Let me tell you, stress and stressful condition can be a major factor. Stress is an emotional reaction to an adverse effect or a tension or a circumstance. And under stress, anything can happen. People that are overwhelmed with stress can give any type of reason and exonerate themselves. They can use the stress to engage in a blame game. How can you talk of the situation where a man under stress was so overwhelmed with stress, and then he had a lot of work, reading in an upstairs, doing his work in an upstairs, and then he engaged in a dream. While he was in a dream, he thought it was a reality because of overwhelmed stress. Immediately, he now woke up from the sleep. He thought he was acting in reality until he found himself on the floor, jumped from an upstairs, and he had comminuted fracture, numerous fractures. That was when he knew that it was reality because of stress. This man will be blaming stress for that action. So people under stress can do anything. People can even kill under stress. People can engage in all manner of behavior because of stressful condition. So stress is a dangerous thing that must be dealt with. So stress management is key. What are other reasons why people engage in a blame game? There are some personality traits which, if you have, you will engage in a blame game continuously. What are those personality traits? One of them is the narcissistic type of personality. What is narcissistic type? Narcissistic is spelled as N-A-R-C-I-S-S-I-S-T. Narcissistic. This type of personality is a personality that will never accept a blame for their action. They will give or take. They can never accept the blame. So this type of personality they form about 6.2% of our population. So whatsoever happens, they can never. If you tell them that they are the cause of a problem, they can never accept it. So anything they do, they are right for doing it. And so these are the type of personality. You can imagine if this narcissist type of personality is a president of a nation, or a senate president, or a governor, or a leader somewhere. Every excuse, every suggestion, every opinion that you give, this man will never accept it. He will only do things the way he feels that should be done, and can never accept a blame for anything that goes wrong. They will always exonerate themselves. They only look at his own side because of that personality. So it must be dealt with. And so when some people behave this way, you see somebody, a leader, or somebody behaving like this, or a husband or a wife, just know that it might be this type of personality, and so you know how to handle them. What are other personality traits? There are personality traits we call the controlling perfectionist. What did I say? Controlling perfectionist. These people are so perfect in their way. Anything they do, they feel they are perfect. And if you don't do it their way, it means they will continue to blame you until you do it the way they feel or they believe. You have not done nothing. So they will continue to blame others who cannot behave the way they feel or they believe. So these people, everything they do, their own is the only one that is perfect. So this kind of people, if you engage with them, they will be blaming people continuously. They will engage in a blame game. They can never accept anything. They will exonerate themselves and continue to blame others. These are types of personalities that we're talking about. Other personalities like low esteem. Some people have a low esteem, so they will continue to blame others because of their condition. What are other reasons? We have talked about negative complexes before in our previous episode. And you know, complexes are an emotional reaction or emotional response to the ideas or feelings that we have before, or memories, or a concept that we have imbibed into our life, or previous experiences which we have already in our system, and makes us to react unconsciously or subconsciously to an action. These are negative complexes. Can make people to engage in a blame game. What are those complexes? Let me mention a few of them. You can also refer back to our previous episode so you can refresh your memories. What are those complexes? One of them we talked about before was the Oedipus complex, or what we call the parental complex, which has both male and female factor. This is a condition where the father have erotic feeling or erogenous feeling towards the daughter, and vice versa, the mother towards her son, and they can engage in illicit sexual intercourse with themselves. That is, the father can get the daughter pregnant and he feels that it's normal. So with this kind of situation, they can never accept that kind of blame. With this kind of complexes that the father has, whatsoever you do, he will never accept the blame. He will keep on exonerating himself. So we need to watch out. What are other complexes we talk about? Superiority complex. A man with a superiority complex who feels that his ideas are always superior to others, he can never accept a blame. So this kind of complexes, we need to watch out for it. They can never accept the blame. They can never accept it. They will always continue to exonerate themselves. What of those that have God kind of complex? These people feel that they have divine ideas. So every suggestion that you make, they feel their own is on top. Their own is divine. So they can never accept it. So in a condition like this, if you don't study them, you'll be having problems with them. So they can engage in a blame game continuously because of this condition. Those complexes must be dealt with. What of the Madonna war complex, which we talked about before? These are the complexes with people who engage in immoral behaviors. Anything under skirt goes. So how can you blame this kind of people? These are the kind of people that can rape women anyhow. They can see a woman on the road who is not well dressed. They can decide to rape the woman, and they cannot accept their blame. They will never accept it. They will exonerate themselves because of one thing or the other. These are the Madonna war complexes. These complexes, by the time you have them, you will always engage in a blame game and exonerate yourself. So we need to watch out for these negative complexes. Or what are other reasons? A feeling of resentment towards a partner. or a relationship. What do we mean? Resentment is an emotional reaction of anger, is an emotional reaction of bitterness towards a partner who has taken the order for granted. So the person feels bitter, he feels offended because he was taken for granted or he was not being appreciated, and that he will now react negatively in form of anger, in form of fury, in form of bitterness and offense, and it could be detrimental. So this kind of people feeling resentment is very key, and they can blame anything. You go to a point that if you give them any responsibility, they will decide to give you reasons. And that is why if you have a servant or anybody working for you, they need to be appreciated. If not, it will get to a point where they begin to give you reasons why they cannot continue. They will bring a lot of reasons and exonerate themselves from an action. They can even commit it in and tell you that they are not the one involved because of feeling of resentment. They want to see whether they can attack you back because you did not appreciate them. They did all the things they did for you, but you took them for granted. And so even so many people have been killed. Some masters have been killed by their house help or vice versa. So many things, even house girls have done so many things to their madam because they felt they were not, they were taken for granted and they were not appreciated. And they now use the blame game to now execute their action. And this is why we are talking about it. This is very, very key, and it has caused a lot of issues. What are other reasons? Feeling of unhappiness and unsatisfaction in marriage is a key issue to blame game. When a husband or a wife is not happy in a marriage, he can do anything. He can blame anybody. He can engage in a blame game for his or her action. What can you say about a wife who now reported her husband because he was not happy? He reported her husband for battery. He reported her husband for gender-based violence. He reported, especially even in the Western world, when a woman is not happy with or satisfied in a marriage or relationship, he can bring up any reason and allow the police to enter and cause chaos in the house. These are what we're talking about. When a woman is not happy, he can bring up reason because, and as a blame game, because of unsatisfaction. These are the things we are talking about. Let me give you one illustration or a story as I begin to round up this session of the reasons for blame game. It's a story of how the feeling of resentment towards a neighbor or a partner could be a reason for blame game and could be very detrimental. There's this guy who has a girlfriend and they've been going out for over 1 year. He provides for this girl in terms of finances, her upkeep, her jewelry, dresses, and the rest. He's always providing. But each time he wants an appreciation of sex, he wants to visit the local government headquarters, this girl will refuse. He continued for a very long time. Each time he asks for this appreciation, he wants to be appreciated. This girl will take him for granted. Despite all this, the guy will still be providing for this girl. So he started looking for an opportunity to verse his anger and engage in his blame game. So in one day, they now went out he took this girl to a club where they could now have fun and then cool down in the evening. So they started drinking, ordered for a drink upon drink. And while they were drinking, this girl felt pressed and she decided to go and ease herself. Not knowing that this guy had packets or tablets of drug sedative, diazepam volume 10. It's not even volume 5, volume 10. He had about 20 tablets of volume 10, which he has crushed together, grounded together into powder. While this girl went to urinate, this guy and left her drink with the boyfriend, thinking that it was safe in his hand. Blame game in action. Feeling of resentment is dangerous. What did he do? He took this grounded powder, tablets, grounded together, 20 tablets in one. He mixed it with her drink, poured it into her drink, mixed it up, and cocked the drink back as if nothing happened. This girl came back excitedly after he has finished easing herself. He sat down and began to drink. He took up the bottle and began to drink. While he was drinking, oh, guess what happened? He fell asleep deeply, so deeply asleep because the amount of Valium 10, the sedative, was heavy. He fell into deep sleep, as if it was even anesthesia. So this guy now dragged this lady, carried this girlfriend, and took her to a room that he has booked. What did he do? He began to have various sex turns on this lady, unprotected sex. Several turns because he was prepared. He was looking for an entry point. He did not stop there. After having 4 or 5 rounds for this girl, he now invited other of her friends, 5 of her friends who were in the club there. And they began to have their turns, one after the other, unprotected. Resentment is dangerous. Up to the point that one of the guys that knew her had to come to her rescue and took her to safety. That was the only saving grace. The outcome was what? This girl was visited with hepatitis and HIV/AIDS. For 1 month, this girl could not walk because of the feeling of resentment. Let me tell you, many people do things because of the blame game. You will not know the reason why people behave until you get to know the cause. And this is why we are dealing with them. So that when you see somebody misbehaving, having negative performance, negative occurrence and behavior, you will trace it back to something and then you know how to deal with them. That is why we're talking on this channel. I'd like you to follow me gently and subscribe to it because this is very heavy. It will make our societies to be better. It will make us to have a better relationship because if you know why a person is misbehaving, you can easily handle that case. And this is why we are talking about it. Please share this to your loved ones, to your contacts and friends. And stay tuned for the next episode because this is very heavy. We must deal with this blame game. God punish the blame game.